For those that don't know me already, I'm Nigel Biswas-Baldwin, co-founder of Phraktion, and joined today by my fellow co-founder, Paul Reynolds. Hi, Paul. Thanks for joining. But the most important person today, of course, is Beth Grimm, who's our speaker, who will take us through her presentation. Actually, continue a little bit of an AI series, if you like, from data to dosage, prescribing governance for the AI revolution in life sciences. So that's what we have to look forward to with Beth's presentation. But just to say one or two things about Beth, although Beth will introduce herself very much better than I can, of course. Just say Beth is a seasoned risk management professional in the pharmaceutical industry and is now certified AI governance professional. Primarily, Beth uses her expertise in artificial intelligence to educate and to address novel risks and opportunities. Uh, so thank you, Beth, for joining. But I would just
Thank
go
you.
to the next slide and just say something very quickly about Fraction. So again, not to labour the point, Fraction been in existence for about the last couple of years with a really bold ambition of revolutionising how work gets done in pharma. And you've probably all seen we have a new model for accessing real expertise in pharma and biotech, and actually moving beyond more traditional consultancy agency models. What we offer is really fractional top tier expertise and really able to provide really precision driven solutions to many different problems that we see every day across the pharma industry. And to do that, we actually operate across a global network of people. Many of you see here today, but there are many others, almost 1,200 people now operating across the network. So shameless plug for a Fraction first up, but over to you right now, Beth. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nigel, for the introduction and for having me today. So, as Nigel said, my name is Beth Grimm. I'm the founder and principal of Beth Grimm Leadership Consulting, and so there's three major areas I work in. The first one, my primary focus is AI governance. I also work in risk management in general for the life science and pharma industry, and then I also am a coach, and I also do coaching as well. But today I'm here to talk to you about AI governance, uh, what it is, and why it's important, particularly now in our AI journey and the journey in the life science and pharma industries. So I found this cartoon, and I think it makes the point perfectly about where we are now with artificial intelligence. A big appeal of it is that it's a very powerful data processor and data analyzer. And the early promise of it was that we could have it do tasks for us, particularly repetitive tasks, um, and use them as an assistant to us so that we can be more productive and efficient. So I want to just do a quick review of what is AI and what are AI agents. I know there's been other webinars, and I'm you know uh, in case you haven't seen this before, but artificial intelligence in a broad sense is software systems that can mimic human intelligence. And so at its most simple, you have an input, and then you have a magic box in the middle that typically will contain a large language model, such as if you're using ChatGPT or Google Gemini or something like that. And then you get an output. And that output could be the answer to a question. If it's generative AI, it can create things for you. It can also be predictive and probabilistic and predict and forecast as well. But what are AI agents? So this is something that you're hearing more and more about. See commercials about AI agents. In the US, we hear commercials for Salesforce, automatically rebooking your reservation from outside to inside if it starts to rain, except if you're Matthew McConaughey. His agents never work well for him. But basically, it's the same schema. You have you have an input, and this could be some kind of system event. It could be a user message, or it could be a message from another agent. So oftentimes these agents work in concert, and there's multiple agents that each are part of an overall workflow. So the agent gets its input. It'll be equipped again with some kind of model, a large language model, or maybe a small language model, depending on the application. It will have instructions, so it knows what it can and cannot do. And then it has tools. And so those tools are, you can see down here, the agent will make tool calls depending on what the situation requires so that it can retrieve information, so that it can decide what actions need to be taken based on that information. And it has memory. So it's an uh, adaptive system that will continue to learn. And then it will give an output. So that output may be a message to another agent that's in the overall workflow for their set of instructions, for their input about what the next agent's supposed to do. Or it could be the result of the tool call and an action that the agent took. So, the difference, the difference with AI agents is autonomous agents can quickly understand what a customer's intent is and then take the appropriate actions to fulfill what the customer or the person needs. So if you think about, say, rebooking an airline flight, you may start out by sending a message, into a chatbot on an airline's website saying you want to rebook the the flight, and then you'll give information to the agent, what your booking number is, the outcome that you're looking for. And then the agent, that first agent will do its part. It might be the retrieval agent to look up your booking information and have that. It may then hand off that to another agent, that information to another agent who then looks at, has access to the booking system in terms of what flights are are available and will meet your needs. It may ask you then, I can rebook you on this flight. Would you like to do that? You say yes, and then it goes to another agent that actually makes the booking. Of course, this is all happening behind the scenes very quickly. So to us, this whole process is very invisible, but that's basically how agents work. And then an agentic system is having the overall orchestration of all of these agents and how they're supposed to work. So there's very little human intervention required. And it's, a way to break up a multi-step workflow, and give these agents each their own task to do as part of the overall workflow. Okay, let me turn this off. So why AI governance? Well, I've come up with 5 drivers that I see make the case for why AI governance is important and why organizations should be, at the minimum, thinking about this if they haven't been already. So first of all, first and foremost, we always want to ensure ethical and responsible AI. We hear a lot about bad actors hacking into systems, injecting malicious code that causes the AI to do something it's not supposed to do. And so really, adhere to those principles. The next is, it's all about the money. Billions of dollars are being invested globally and in the life science and pharma sector. So, just based on that investment, that isn't going down at this point. That's an important consideration. And thirdly, we have lessons that we've learned. AI, artificial intelligence, has been around for decades, actually. It's since the mid 1950s, but in the science and engineering realms. But it's become democratized, if you will, with the launch of ChatGPT in 2024, or excuse me, 2022. And we've learned a lot of lessons and have gained a lot of experience that we need to make sure we heed so we don't keep, making mistakes again or mitigating the similar situations. I'm just gonna, okay, whoops, sorry. And then as a result of this, we have countries enacting new AI laws and new AI legislation to govern AI. Probably the best example of this is the EU AI Act, which has started to come in force in a phase like manner. Um, and then we have it just in our own sector with life sciences and pharma. The medicines regulatory agencies are reacting to all of this with new regulations and draft guidance. So they're trying to catch up now that they see how AI is being employed to discover drugs, to develop drugs, and so forth. And the need for those types of regulations and guidances are really critical, and people actually want them because they want to know what they need to be doing to get their drug or medical device approved. So I'd like to take a word about what is responsible and ethical AI. And if you have those two things, uh, then you also have trustworthy AI. And that's what we're talking about, right? We want the AI systems to be trustworthy. We don't want to worry about what they're doing with our data, and so forth. So I'm going to just talk just briefly through the left-hand side about the responsible AI principles. And then this is how, on the right-hand side, is an example of how they're put into action um, in the NIST AI risk management framework, which is a US based framework. So first of all, you want the system to be robust. You don't want it to be breaking, falling down, not working. If you have a power outage or some kind of technical glitch, you don't want the whole system to fall apart. You want it to be fair. You don't want it to be discriminating discrimin discriminating against certain groups of people that could cause them harm or cause discrimination. It needs to be safe and secure. So again, thinking about the possibility of cybersecurity attacks, and it needs to be human centric. And that's really what it's all about. AI are tools that help us humans. They work for us, we don't work for them. And so always keeping that human centricity in mind. And these systems need to be accountable. You know, who has the accountability for the model, for the data, for the overall system are important considerations. And then it also needs to be transparent and explainable. And then, of course, privacy, the privacy of the data, protecting people, and so forth. So now let's talk about the money. So here's a chart that shows how pharma is investing in AI. And it's funny, just recently I read that the US economist Mark Zandi estimates that over the past year, more than one-third of the growth of real domestic product in the US, GDP in the US, has been powered by AI. And globally, the investment continues year on year. And so, getting back to life science and pharma, this chart just shows three main areas of investment. It talks about facilities, so that's mostly manufacturing facilities that have AI-driven capabilities. Uh, Investment in companies' own internal large language models, and then investment in drug discovery platforms. Uh, one one way AI is being employed is uh, rep repurposing, using AI to repurpose existing drugs for new indications. And then if you can't read the fine print on the right-hand side, this talks about the amount of investment. And again, it's in the billions of dollars that these companies are really making these huge investments. And then if you look at it another way, AI startups are popping up all over the place. And some of these startups have become, the valuations of these startups is really high right now, but some of these startups are really uh, becoming big players as well, and major pharmaceutical companies are investing in their tools and services. So they also are having a moment besides the big AI players such as OpenAI, Google, and Microsoft. Okay, so we talked about responsibility and ethics. We've talked about the money. So what have we learned? Well, one thing is we've developed a new lexicon, which is not surprising with new technology. I've talked already about large language models. These are language models that have been created by OpenAI and by Google and Microsoft, by Meta. And so, for example, ChatGPT, their large language model is based upon the internet and, scraping the internet all kinds of data. So that's really how that works. And then there's other examples of large language models. And we're also starting to talk about small language models, which are smaller, more specific defined data sets for a particular purpose. We've talked about bias a little bit and hallucinations. AI can hallucinate. It can give you a nonsensical answer. It can give you an answer that's just wrong. Some of the criticisms of some of the large language models like ChatGPT and Claude and Copilot is that they can be a bit sycophantic. So they want to please you, and so they'll make up stuff if they don't know the answer. So we really need to be on a watch out for that. And then model reliability. We have this software and we want it to stay reliable. It continues to adapt, it continues to learn, it continues to have new data uh, inputted into it. And so we don't want that model drift where it starts to operate outside of the parameters that's been set for it. You may have heard more about compute and compute power, and that's how it's run. And the more technology that we have, and the more it evolves, the increase of that compute power, so that it can provide uh, answers and do things in milliseconds and in a very short amount of time. So you may have heard about large data centers being constructed. Certainly in the US, there's a huge one being constructed right now. I think it's for Elon Musk's Grok AI in Tennessee. And there's a lot of people that will be living near it are really up in arms about it. But it takes a lot of water to keep the systems cooled. It takes a lot of electricity. And so where are we going to get that? And you may have heard in the news recently about some of these companies starting to uh, build nuclear power plants again, or uh, you know start up plants that have been shut down for a long time. And this is particularly a big deal in the U.S. And then we also have the coinage of a new phrase, human in the loop, and that reflects that human centricity that we need to maintain. So AI is getting more autonomous. As I talked about agents, they have the ability to reason and to understand what the task is and then what the appropriate action is. But the humans need to stay in the loop. And it may look different in different systems, but that's very critical to maintain. And then we have applications of other concepts. I spoke about cybersecurity threats and a whole new a threat matrix that this brings. And it needs to be protected not only from malicious actors, but also just uh, humans and human mistakes and sending data somewhere it shouldn't be sent, for example. I spoke about the need for transparency and explainability. The models need to be transparent. You need to be able to look under the hood, so you understand how the model operates, and it needs to be explainable. So not only explainable to the IT and to tech in a tech speak kind of way, but also explainable to the non-tech people, like all of us probably on the call. And it needs continuous monitoring. It's not a set and forget it type of software because of model drift, because of the cybersecurity. and privacy risks. It needs to be continuously monitored to ensure it's acting within its parameters. And then finally, it's just not a magic bullet. It's not a solution in search of a problem. It's the solution can be the solution to a problem. It can be part of the solution. So it's not going to solve everything and for us. So you really need that use case that AI, can be the solution for. So really, what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? So now I'd like to talk about what are those the pillars, the four pillars of AI governance. So how do we deal with this? What kind of frameworks, should we be thinking about and putting in place? So first off, one of the pillars is oversight. So those clear roles and responsibilities and accountability for AI systems throughout their life cycle. So that can occur at an organizational level. You may have a chief AI officer or the chief data officer is or tech officer is responsible for this, but everybody, who has those roles. And then you also have different types of oversight, at the level at which the AI is operating. Um, you need risk management, identifying and mitigating those risks. I talked about bias and adversarial attacks, but there could also be a risk of over-reliance on automated decisions. We hear these funny anecdotes of people just kind of blindly following what ChatGPT says when it's actually hallucinating. And then we need those guardrails, right? What are those technical and procedural safeguards to ensure that AI operates within its defined parameters and its ethical boundaries? We do not, uh, even if you have non-biased data going into a mortgage approval system, you don't want that model to be able to make discriminatory decisions against, who's approved for a mortgage and who's not, for example. And then again, I mentioned those laws, policies, and processes. So if we look at the data risks, there's four different domains that I like to think about when I think of an AI system. First of all is the data, right? If nothing else, artificial intelligence is data. Data goes in, data comes out. And so you need so that you don't have garbage in and garbage out, you need that data quality. I spoke about bias, privacy, and security, and also data ownership. And that you may have heard headlines too about artists being upset because their copyrighted material has been scraped from the internet and now is part of some of these large language models. And how do we manage that? You have operational risks. How is the AI going to be integrated into your organization? How is it going to integrate into existing systems you already have? How is it going to be maintained? We talked about that, constant monitoring. And your AI won't be successful if users don't adopt it. So how are you going to bring users along on this journey? What kind of training and education are you going to provide them? Uh, what kind of education on permissible uses of the AI so users aren't using it in a way that they're not, that it wasn't designed for or not supposed to be. And then I spoke about accountability and that environmental impact as well. And then we can think about the model risks. I've talked already about a number of these. And then I also mentioned copyright risks, intellectual property risks as well. And then with regulatory, there is a lack of or evolving guidelines. And so keeping ahead of that landscape and knowing what the agencies are thinking and what the country laws are is it can be quite a challenge. Okay, so just a really brief review of some key regulatory guidance as it relates to artificial intelligence. I'm going to be talking about these from the point of view of the FDA, although the principles behind all these were developed in cooperation of the FDA and the MHRA and I believe Health Canada. Uh, but I'm going to just put it in FDA terms for purposes of this presentation. So the oldest one we have, and goes back to, I believe, 2017, is software as a medical device. And so this defines the regulatory pathway for standalone software that acts as a medical device. So think of uh, diagnostics, for example, um, and other medical devices that are run by software. And this really also set the foundation for future regulations. And then a follow on to this that was released earlier this year or in 2024 was the acknowledgement that when you have an AI driven medical software as a medical device, the AI is going to keep changing. There's going to be new data introduced, it's going to adapt and learn. And so it's just not feasible for every time there's a change that you would have to resubmit for approval of your medical device. And so they've introduced a concept around a predetermined change control plan, which is submitted along with the regulatory submission that outlines, how you're going to manage the change control, what that plan looks like, so that you don't have to receive approval each time there's a change. For those of you who are really into the GXPs, the good manufacturing practice, good clinical practice, and so forth, we have a new one, GMLP. And so that establishes the best practices for the design, development, and validation of AI and machine learning models. And two new draft guidances have come out from the FDA earlier in this year in January. One is around AI-enabled device lifecycle management. So one, it outlines the documentation that's needed for marketing submissions, and it also recommends best practices for the design, deployment, and also performance management of an AI-based medical device. And then it also has released draft guidance on the use of AI for generating data to support regulatory decision making, because that's something that's happening, but uh, companies and drug developers, in the past didn't know what the FDA would require in the marketing in their marketing submissions. And they've introduced a risk-based framework, which really gets back to the model credibility for the specific context of use of that model. So here's some things that are going on, and I'm sure as agentic AI continues to evolve and is used, we'll see more guidance coming along. So that's just a really brief overview of that. Okay, so here's a very busy slide, and I apologize for that, but I did want to give you some examples of how this plays out actually in the drug development life cycle. So across the top, I have the four main phases of drug development. And then down on the left-hand side are those four pillars of AI governance. And so oversight at the level at which the systems are operating, is human in the loop. That's a very, it's a very important aspect of oversight is making sure that humans have a role in the AI and are checking, confirming, validating it. If you look at drug discovery and thinking about how compounds are discovered, the mining of data, the repurposing of existing compounds, you need that data quality and you need that model reliability. And so some of the guardrails you may put in place are, defining your data sources and documenting what your data curation processes are and having a process for that data curation. For clinical trials, of course, we're talking about patients and patient data. And so protecting against bias and protecting the privacy and security of the data are two major risks. And then guardrails can be many things. Two that come to my mind are on the tech side, using in privacy enhancing techniques in that AI model, whether it be anonymization of data, of sensitive data, or somehow firewalling that sensitive data. And then on the user side, it's, the training on what are the permissible uses of the AI system, and training them on how to use the system properly. When we think about manufacturing, we think of quality. We think of, uh, how to prevent those quality failures. A lot of manufacturing systems are now being more and more AI driven. And so how does that figure into your quality management systems, uh, those AI capabilities and your QC processes? And then finally, in commercialization, whether, where you're going to the external world, whether it be through healthcare providers in a medical affairs capacity, or a marketing capacity, um, making sure that any AI marketing campaigns are accurate, they don't generate misleading claims. Um, Again, customer relationship management, particularly on the healthcare provider side, having those, you want to be able to get insights from all the data you're collecting from healthcare providers, but you want to do that in a compliant fashion. A big use case is customer relationship management systems, and so again, making sure those systems have the appropriate guardrails around them. Okay, so when AI goes wrong, um, we know it does. We've heard about it many times in the news. We've probably had personal experience of AI going wrong for us. I'll just give you a quick personal example. I had AI uh, develop a travel itinerary for me when I was going to be in London for 3 days, and it did a great job of giving me a good 3-day plan and the uh, major landmarks to visit. But it also told me that I could book a city pass for 3 different landmarks. And so I went and I didn't thoroughly check it. So I booked it, tried to book it for 3 landmarks, and it turned out one of the landmarks wasn't part of the package. And so then I had to cancel it and then redo it, and it just created more work for me. Um, so I did not check it as thoroughly as I should have. Uh, that's minor small potatoes, but here are some headlines that I pulled out that uh, really touch on different risk domains that I talked about. Um, and so one is United Healthcare, which is a private health insurance company in the U.S. They had a class action suit brought against them because they have an AI system that reviews medical insurance claims and will approve or deny them. And there was a class action suit brought about by elderly patients and their families that their requests, their medically necessary requests, were being denied at an extremely high rate. And it was overriding physicians' uh, decisions and recommendations and causing people to not have the ongoing care and ongoing coverage that they needed after they were released from the hospital or released from a rehab center. Um, there's another uh, there's another case of there was a recent FDA alert around the operating module of a cardiac catheter system. So patients would have this catheter, and the operational system would work to keep it operating properly and also be monitoring. And apparently there were cybersecurity vulnerabilities that, whether it be bad actors or just human error and humans messing with it in ways that it shouldn't be, that could cause the whole system to fail, which could cause potential life-threatening injury or even death. So the FDA has released an alert around cybersecurity attacks. And then the next one, the Clearview AI, actually has to do with a GDPR violation. So there's this US company, Clearview AI, that uh, um, is a facial recognition company, and they were collecting facial images from people in the Netherlands and in Austria that were in violation of the legal basis for collecting as according to the GDPR, and so they're facing a lot of trouble. So one is again these privacy laws that exist in some countries but not in others. So in this case, it was a U.S. company operating transnationally, and they were in violation of an EU law. And then finally, I spoke about this before, but bias in medical devices, in AI-driven medical devices, is a well-known risk. And so having those strategies in place to, identify and mitigate that. And one example, quick example I'll give for that is uh, this is especially has arisen in the diagnostic realm in radiology. So there was an FDA approved AI-driven diagnostic to assist physicians in reading mammograms, and it was having, it turns out, women of color having false positives and having to go for more imaging and other interventions at a much, much higher rate than for white women. And when they looked into it, it turned out that the training data for the model was predominantly data from white women's mammograms. And so then that had to be fixed, and it's not hard to think about all the consequences of getting a false positive reading from a cancer diagnostic. And there's other examples of hallucinations as well that then cause other medical intervention. So those are just a few examples I'm sure you can think of in your own life or from the news that you watch. Other examples as well, but it was not hard to come up with uh, these four examples, and there's many, many others. So, what are the key takeaways? AI is a powerful tool. It has amazing capabilities. I am an AI enthusiast myself, and an AI user, but the governance aspect is non-negotiable. It needs to be trustworthy from bench to bedside. And if organizations are adopting these tools, waiting until they have a whole uh, array of AI tools and they haven't thought about the governance just makes putting those frameworks in place more complex, and there's higher risk without it. So really proactively implementing this as part of a strategy, an AI implementation strategy, or after you've piloted some AI and you're going ahead to implement these innovations to drive ethical and safe AI. And so I'll leave you with one last cartoon that I thought was funny. And we're having a lot of rain in where I'm at, but hopefully it's not raining data breaches.
Very good. Thank you, Beth.
So yep, so it's time for questions. Here, if you would like to contact me, please do so by email or by LinkedIn. I'd love to connect and talk more about this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Beth.
No?
So lots of questions on the chat, but maybe if we just open the phone line up if you like, and if there are any questions, please shout them out. So
whole thing kind of makes me, I don't want to say sick, but as a job seeker myself, to me, it seems the human aspect is more checking AI work opposed to creating your own. I mean, for example, they want to use AI to get real-time test results from QC. But when I asked how does that not replace QC, they said, well, we're going to need people to check those results. Okay, well then it's not real-time results. And again, people aren't doing the work. One thing I love about cell and gene therapy and biotech is the creativity and all of that. To me, it seems like AI's role is going to be that, and our job is going to be checking it, and that terrifies me, especially as a job seeker. So
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
How does this not replace people?
Right. Well, that's an ongoing debate. And Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has said it's going to take many jobs, thousands and thousands of jobs away. And so I think the jury is still out on the impact, the job impact that it has. There's there's a school of thought around, and a saying, AI won't take your job, but it will but someone who knows AI will take your job. I'm messing up the phrasing, but that's the gist of it. And so I think the jury is out on that. But again, if we keep that human centricity in the center, and that these companies keep that in their center, that it is, it's for us to use. And I would say that our job with AI wouldn't be solely to keep checking it and verifying it. There's all kinds of tools that can do that work and analyze that data. But for sure, we need to play a part in it to make sure it works for us. And and companies that want to be successful will have to respond to their customers' needs. But it's still a bit of a wild west out there, and an unknown how it's all gonna play out. But that's why it's important to be thinking these things and asking these questions now. And we should never stop asking, uh, you know, do humans belong in the loop?
And if they don't, where do we go? I mean, it's going to take, when self-driving cars, like the lower level jobs. I don't need to, the cashiers. I mean, where do we go? Where do we, it just seems to me that the point of AI is to be faster, more intelligent, and I just don't see how that doesn't leave us with nowhere to go. That's just my fear.
Yeah, no, it's a valid concern, and that's why it's up to us humans to make those right decisions and have that ethical and responsible mindset, and have that ethical and responsible culture in our organizations, in those companies that are developing AI, so that it's up to us humans to keep it so that we're not fully autonomous, and why are we even here? I will say though, the other point is that if you think about it, if we turn over all the autonomy to AI systems, right, and they just churn and work, humans need to continue to provide data. Continue to need to be creative, and they continue to need to generate data for the models. Otherwise, if you take it to its most extreme end, it's just going to eat itself basically. So the humans are still we're still here to direct and dictate what we want these systems to do for us.
And I was going to say, Nicole, actually, that maybe with driverless cars, we can all be more productive and spend our time in webinars. But clearly, your multitasking allows that already. So kudos, Nicole. But anyway, so Sarah, I see your hand up. Next
Yeah,
question.
I've got a couple of questions really, because I'm sort of floating around a bit, really doing different things. Not so much, not permanently in-house anymore in pharma or biotech. Are there certain departments that are moving faster than others? And are there certain areas where they're quite a way behind in terms of adoption of AI? And also, how does it tend to be organized in pharma? Is it that you've got, I don't know, chief digital officer and there's departmental leads? I know that's probably lots of variations, but sorry, I've just thrown about three questions at you.
Yeah, I mean, there's different different governance models, and I used to work for one of the major pharmaceutical companies, and really everything was federated, right? You had the at the corporate level, the overall policies and you know global risks and all of that, and then they moved down through the organization in a federated manner. So R&D was different than sales and marketing, different than finance, and so on and so forth. A smaller company, may have a small committee that to have a process of how they decide what AI is going to come, what their AI strategy is and how they execute it. So it really depends on the size and the maturity and the industry that the organization's working in, because we're in a very highly regulated industry, that's a huge piece of it as opposed to some other industries that, aren't as highly regulated. But thanks, that's a good question.
Thank you, sir. Quickly then, to, Magdalena, I think your hand is up.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this presentation. Actually, really interesting. I haven't been in a, I mean, I worked for 18 years in global clinical trials and recently requalified as an organization consultant and a coach. So this is very interesting. I follow a lot of literature related to leadership of AI and so on, and I find it really interesting about currently there's a lot of comments around actually incapacity of leadership of taking responsibility for this tool, but it's developing with such speed and with while we don't have really that much time for sophisticated thinking and consideration while this technology evolves. So when this is another question, more kind of a comment, but when I'm thinking about human centric and current pressure in the industry on time, speed, delivery, and implementing the tools, it made me wonder, to what extent we have space and time to think, because it's literally evolving so fast. So it's good to, I agree with thinking, but we have no choice but start thinking about it. And it's good to ask those questions. But for example, I have myself been quite worried about, for example, GDPR and data privacy considerations, having been dealing with quite a lot AI interfaces recently, and seeing that actually my privacy was not really responded to or considered. So obviously in the clinical trials, it's a big consideration. So just a thought, thinking about, how do we continue this human centricity and leadership and implement these changes while we deal with a technology that is so fast and so yet unknown?
Yeah, and I would say, AI literacy is key. It's key for leadership. It's key for all of us because we use AI whether or not uh, we know it, right? Just on your phone, when you do a search on your phone or type ahead email, that's all artificial intelligence when it, thinks it knows what you're going to say next and it'll just suggest that wording. And so that's why I think literacy is so important and education. And I was just at a conference earlier this week, and a big topic was AI education in the schools, at the university, in higher education and in the schools. And so, it's here, and these are all important questions, and thinking about, how we educate our younger generation who's growing up with it to use it, not as a shortcut for cheating, but teaching them how to use it responsibly, and again, just embedding that responsible and ethical mindset, through education. And part of what I do, frankly, is literacy and education, as well as leadership teams that want to do AI, or they're getting pitched by a lot of AI companies. Like, we have this tool to do this, and we have this tool to do that. And going through those kind of structured thinking exercises of, where are your gaps? What are your problems you want to solve? And is AI the best way to do it? And if it is, I had one company who implemented AI, and it failed and it was to help with patient recruitment. And it failed because they didn't understand the type of data that the tool was going to require. And when they went to get that data during the implementation phase of the tool, it failed because that data wasn't available. And there was risks with that they could have mitigated had they known ahead of time that these were the potential risks. So yeah, it's it's a big, I wouldn't say it's a big learning curve, but it is a learning curve. And so that's how you keep, I think, human in the loop and that human centric by this education and AI literacy. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Maybe Paul with a final killer question.
Yeah, it's probably also a perspective not to tell people not to panic. I think this is really important, Beth, what you've said today. Pharma has been very careful about coming into the AI area, which is not a surprise why they've gone from manufacturing and R&D, because they're safer areas with large amounts of information or precedented pathways. If we look at other areas, creative, marketing, pricing, that sort of stuff, they've been very careful until they've had the tools with sufficient governance to allow them to use them internally. And what we've seen is pharma companies adopting systems with protections. So in that respect, they're starting to now play. One of the big fears most of our members say is, am I going to be replaced? What we're seeing is AI is replacing some low-level functions, and are horrible things to say, but things like medical writing, you can get a long way on AI before you need additional skill. And even artworking, we can actually produce a lot of scamp work and early work, on AI. However, there comes a point where interpretation and expertise adds the color. And we're seeing this all the time. I've done a few due diligence exercises on other companies that have been offering AI web scraping answers to things like, what price will this drug achieve? What strategy should I adopt? Pharma's secretive. It doesn't publish most of its secret habits. So therefore, it's not sitting publicly out there. For example, pricing information is absolutely secret. So anybody that says that AI is going to dictate and tell you what your pricing strategy is talking bullshit. They might give you some clues, but they're going to need to speak to a Tom Gorlick in the States about what does the US payer really think about this. They're going to talk to one of us, and they're going to ask for our interpretation on top of the clues that AI has provided. So I think governance is really useful for us because it's creating some protections. It's slowing people down a bit, making them more thoughtful. And there's definitely a place for expertise. And that's my view from the last year of playing in this and panicking, and then realizing that actually we still have a lot to add, Beth.
Yeah,
Paul,
exactly. I couldn't agree more. Mm-hmm.
Paul, I'm just going to add on, and Beth, you had a slide in here. First comment, changes in the next 5 years, I don't know, maybe not. Changes 20 years, I could see dramatic changes in terms of that. But to your point, you were talking about the payer dynamic. I just did a deliverable for someone, and I had to subcontract out some payer research. And we developed a questionnaire. They collected all of it and then created the output. It was an AI generated output. I'm not sure what language tool they used or whatever, but and then it was summarized for each discussion question and then an overarching kind of conclusion. And I struggled with, that was delivered to me, do I just turn it over to the client, right? And I went through and went back to each individual question in the survey and the individual inputs and found several discrepancies between the output that came in a really nice looking set of slides. And so I had to go back and make really adjustments, and I'm really glad I did that. But I mean, it just begs to the idea that, someone still, I think you had the slide, Beth, the inputs and the outputs just have to be right. So when you mentioned that, it triggered another thought, Paul, on my end.
We're still needed, Tom.
Well, for a few years.
For a few years, maybe until we retire.
I'll be retired by the time I'm gone.
None of us truly retire, Tom. None of us.
Really thoughtful, though. Very useful, Beth. Really, really made my brain think today. Very useful slides. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to make one clarifying comment when I was reviewing the regulatory guidance for space considerations on the slide. The last draft guidance I talked about with the AI-driven decision making, that's for drugs and biologics, it's not just for medical devices. So I just wanted to make that, there was a question in the chat about that. So I just wanted to clarify that. But great. It's, everybody's questions are great questions, and we need to keep asking these questions. And we, can't get complacent. It's not a plug and play. It's going to continue to evolve. And the more people are asking these questions, the better off we will all be. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Beth. I should really give you the last word there, but thank you once again. And just to remind folks to look out for our next webinar in a few weeks. You'll see details soon, hope. Actually looking at the patient perspective. We've actually a little AI twist around that as well, I think. So we'll look out for that. You'll get your invite in the next few days, I hope, around that. So with that, thank you for joining, everybody. Thank you, Beth, and see you soon.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.